And welcome into another episode of the Tell Me More podcast. Too many points here with Marco Marquez, who has been the MVP of the Too Many Points show on the Tell Me More podcast. Made it on the most episodes to this point. We brought you in today. We're going to talk about the NBA. And I mean, I know you're a big baseball fan, but I think I'll get your opinion that's a little less biased than mine since I'm just not a very big baseball fan. But clearly, NBA action, a lot better return, a lot less headache than what we saw from the MLB return. Is that fair to say at this point?
Yeah, even you could say hockey is up there surpassing the MLB right now. But yes, full agreement with you on that one. NBA's content has been a lot more enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, I think not just enjoyable, but clearly on the testing and everything to make sure that
Yes.
there were less hiccups. And I don't even know how much I'm thinking, baseball did that bad. I know it kind of became the talking point. I think obviously this was a very tough thing to do to get sports restarted. And obviously it would have been better if they spent less of the time going into the season, planning things out, getting the protocol kind of squared away and making sure everybody was on board. Comparing it to a bubble is unfair because I don't think there's a version of baseball that can happen in a bubble. Now, we have seen people talking about if NCAA basketball comes back, and even to some degree, if football happens, ways that could have been done in a bubble format where you kind of batch teams together for stretches and you can make sure that nobody has the virus at that time. They're not allowed in and out while they play those games. There are versions that could have worked, and MLB did a poor job there. But in terms of how they've handled it with the different outbreaks, I'm not sure how much they have really screwed up more than they've just shown. There's a lot of internal struggle there that they've had before this started. They were not built to come to an agreement because this is something where people, even that are working together in good faith, are going to have a hard time coming up with really good solutions. NBA, though, had those solutions. They have just from the beginning had this plan ready to go. They've done an amazing job on it. I'd say they've done good rolling with the punches, but they've avoided all the punches. They're like Floyd Mayweather, just dipping and dodging. They're not even getting, a fist on the chin at any point in the fight. I think it's been amazing, and that's just from how to make sure that this happens and doesn't get shut down. In terms of the on-the-court action, I think we all had questions, and we all would just kind of accept whatever happens is fine because we want basketball. I would argue that this has been entertaining as hell. Like, it's not just getting any product on the court. It's been a good product from night one where we thought maybe the offenses would come out slow just based off of the layoff. Instead, there were certain offenses, they were firing on all cylinders and everything. The defenses had to play catch up throughout this process. And we got overtime action. We got buzzer beaters. We got Dame Lillard saying, I'm the best in the league. We had the surprise, the supernova Phoenix Suns. This was, in my mind, better than any finish to a season. I don't know about you, but I love NBA action. I'll watch the first round of games and I'll watch every matchup, but I'm not watching the final 2 months of the NBA season. They found a way to make that fight to the end, and I'm wondering if they're going to keep the play-in game as something to keep those teams that are on the edge of the 8th seed actually fighting instead of tanking for the final 2 months, because this was picture-perfect, great basketball.
Yeah, and I think it was The Ringer today put out an article saying how the new format that the NBA created for the bubble may be something to stick around for a while because Adam Silver just created a bunch of drama for teams competing over the 8th seed alone in the NBA playoffs. And the way I've been watching the way it's been for me, the experience of watching this whole new version of NBA basketball, it feels like a makeup for the cancellation of the NCAA tournament. It's not the same. It's not the same as March Madness from a fan aspect, but being able to just wake up at 11 o'clock and watch basketball from 2 o'clock or from 1 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night. That's great. That's awesome. It's been the perfect medicine or remedy for this whole quarantine. It's what we expected sports to do, and the NBA is just it's surpassing it. It's making what we said come to life. It's kind of magical, and no pun intended for them staying in Disney World or anything, but it does feel magical. It's awesome. It's crazy. I mean, they're taking advantage of a situation, and once again, showing why their product is one of the best that sports has to offer in the world.
All right, I don't remember if I had you on for one of the first pods once the NBA started back up, but I know I've talked a little bit about kind of the ways they try to make the product on television look good, and I know that one of the things I wasn't even aware they were fully doing was the fan aspect, and I had talked about having a virtual audience, and I imagine it being a little bit different, but the way they had the Zoom faces put around the arena, just all the ways that they tried to incorporate, whether it was the extra cameras where they kept on one shot because they didn't have the extra cameramen, but whenever they had different replays, they had a million cameras built into those gyms. With the different ways that they decided to alter and tweak the television product, what were some of the really good parts, and was there anything that just didn't work for you?
Honestly, I think the only thing, and it might be something that I know it's something that's been bothering the other people I've been watching with my roommates, just the delay when there's foul language on the court. I get the point of it. I'm not arguing about its purpose or anything, because there are kids watching the games and they want to keep it a family-oriented product. But that's just me being picky also, because that's how well it's been. Is that the fact is just the delay, the cut and sound. It's just kind of awkward, and sometimes it goes on longer than I thought it would, thinks it needs to go. But that's probably the kind of been the bad part of the at-home experience watching quarantine basketball. But I love the fans. It puts something into the crowd. I love that the players can see that also. That's not just something that we at home can see, but it's happening there in person. You talk about the camera angles. Not only is the NBA experiencing finding out a new way how to play basketball themselves, but they're also making the experience at home different for the viewer. And that's why, like you said, putting all the new different angles that we can see that we wouldn't be able to see with fans in the stadium. So that one's been really cool, because that's something that if they can find a way to do it in the future, it would be really nice. But like we said, there's not a lot of rooms for cameras in a filled arena. But that's been one of the cooler things about it.
Well, I mean, I have heard one of the big discussions being about the extra room, and I know the announcers brought it up a lot, was without kind of as many bodies, particularly people along the baseline, the courtside seats. Obviously, they didn't have the photographers that are under the basket, and having those, that room. First, people were worried that it would be kind of the depth perception for these players would be an issue. And instead, the players said, because we're in the same court all the time, we're not going from arena to arena and having to kind of adjust ourselves to the new depth perception. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's an adjustment at the beginning, but once they got going, obviously, it helped a lot, it looked like, because the offenses were just killing out there. Like, they didn't have to adjust each time. That AAU-style basketball really helped them. And then when they were going after loose balls along the sideline, they were able to jump out there and grab it and not worry, am I going to smash into this photographer? Am I going to smash into this person who has a front row seat? And so it could be, and I doubt it because there's a lot of money in those courtside seats, they could get rid of at least the people that are along the sidelines. And then it's questionable about moving photographers away from the baseline. Obviously, we're moving into an era where video matters. Print newspapers are dying, sadly. You don't need necessarily a photographer that's grabbing a photo that's going to go on the front of the sports section the next morning. But it seems like maybe you could alter where they're at, how much room these players have. And it does seem that the players are making a lot more plays in that area. And then occasionally a ref can actually catch somebody stepping out of bounds at that corner 3 position, where apparently it just happens all the time and they just never see it. Now that there's no fans over there, refs calling it all the time.
That's a good point, because it's something that we have seen a lot of. Now that you say that, there has been a lot of more out of bounds, foot on the line calls in the bubble games. That's what you brought that up.
So there are things that could be changed, but we mentioned this when we first talked about them going back. It's amazing how much time and effort they put into this. They came up with a lot of stuff. It will be interesting to see what they keep, because I think 90% of it is just, this is how we have to function in this environment. I think once you get to the point where there's a vaccine, once this virus is under control and we could actually have people in the crowd again, I think most of the product will just revert to what it was. Now, which are the things that they've seen work really well, can be, used, and aren't just, solutions now. I mean, they used them as solutions now because they had to, but then they realized this is something that going forward still works once we kind of return to the normal environment. I don't know what those things are, but it's always good to see something like the NBA experiment, and to know a league like the NBA, when they see something does work, they're probably more likely than other sports to try to keep it if they can, if it fits into their vision, than some other sports that will probably just immediately go back to exactly how it was prior to having to put on a bubble product that we've been seeing. But I think that will be interesting to see what changes they keep going forward. I'm also interested in kind of which teams kind of changed your opinion. And I think in a minute we'll talk about ones that kind of move their way up and now you might think of as an actual challenger for the title. We had the short list of the Bucks, the Lakers, and the Clippers. There's some really good teams that are playing really well in the bubble, and I wonder which ones have moved up in that conversation. One of them that maybe have been argued, because they did run the table, but they will not be able to have the play-in game to make it in the playoffs. The Phoenix Suns, or as I referred to them earlier, the Supernova Suns, came in. They burned the brightest, but even though they were able to finish without a loss, it all sadly came to the end because the struggling Grizzlies got a little cheap win there at the end to sneak into the play-in game. When you look at what the Suns are able to do, obviously sad that they weren't going to make it in the playoffs, although I think even if they made it, not a lot of people were going to pick them to even put up a really big fight against the Lakers. But what did you see from the Suns? And, is that a team that going forward just gained a lot of momentum that otherwise I don't even think they would have expected that they were in a great position with how their season had finished up when the action got shut down in March?
I think, they were just that team that got hot. I've always been a Booker fan since he came into the league because of the natural scorer that he is. And what we saw was just him at his best, or at least maybe not at his ceiling yet, but getting close there. We're seeing him, what he can do as a leader on a team. He can show up when it matters. Man, as a Lakers fan, I don't feel the sorriness or pity of the Suns missing the playoffs because, they can watch from home for all I care. But just props to them. They were playing a lot more fluent. They looked like they had nothing to lose. They looked like they were just playing basketball. And I think, like I said, there's going to be a team like that. Hopefully the bubble doesn't keep happening for another year. But if there was the league had to play in the bubble again, I believe that there would be a team that would not do exactly what the Suns did, maybe going undefeated, but there would be a team that we would see outside the playoff mark, who maybe didn't see they would have a shot, and little they know, they were there to the last day of regular games.
Yeah, and I mean, I wasn't listening to too many people talk about who kind of could surprise in the bubble, but I definitely wasn't hearing the Suns. And I think it makes sense when you look at kind of the pieces, but you also have a team that hadn't put it together. And even if you could see, maybe Devin Booker himself going off during this time, I don't think anybody expected the entire team to kind of gel the way they did and perform the way they did. And I don't even think it's just about the undefeated aspect. I mean, obviously 8-0 is huge, and it becomes that much bigger of a story when it's not even good enough to earn them that play-in game. But I think that the way that they played was surprising. I think even if they would have lost one of those games, it still was just amazing to see that they could piece it together, because otherwise they were a team that even when they got somebody like Devin Booker, even when they had a pick like, okay, DeAndre Ayton in a draft that has Doncic and Trae Young right there around there, and it's like, did they mess up? It seemed like a team that wasn't going to make the most of any of the pieces they got, and to see that team come together the way they did, fun basketball, really good time. And I'm wondering if going forward, if this is something that they can just keep that momentum heading into next season and build off of this. Is the Suns more like a Rockets team with Harden at the helm, or is this more like a Warriors team with Curry at the helm? With Booker as the lead, you're imagining the best case scenario for the Suns. What, like, their style of play, which one do you think it represents more?
I think I didn't get to say the Warriors, and mostly because you have your one natural scorer on the team in Booker, but this team was also playing a lot of teammate basketball. And I'm saying the word team a lot, but that's how they found their success in the bubble. I mean, they led all teams with assists while in the bubble. And so right there, that tells me that they're not playing the Rocket style of basketball where it's just one man, it's a 1-man, 2-man show, but rather you have your guy that if he needs to put up 40 or 50 points, he will. But also there's other players on this team when they play together, then they can do things like go undefeated and just miss out on the playoffs. What sucks though for the Suns, to end on such a good note, and a high note also with expectations now even higher for next season, you're going to be in a division once again with the Lakers and then a Warriors team that's going to look nothing like this past season, what we saw. And they're only going to look better with a higher draft pick and coming up in this next draft. But I think that right there just tells us what kind of style that they're playing, and maybe they need just their own Thompson, another piece on their team, to where they can get up there to compete with the Warriors and Lakers.
All right, so you're a Lakers fan, obviously. Seeing that finish where, okay, it's the Suns or the Trailblazers push in. I think even with the Grizzlies holding on to that spot, I don't think anybody really imagined them, I'll be surprised if they can win the 2 games to hold off the Trailblazers. But if those are the 2 options as teams to face, which one would you rather your Lakers have to go up against? The Suns, who are playing out of this world right now, or the Trailblazers, where this is a team that potentially could have been I've heard people talk about them being 3rd or 4th in the West if they would have had their players healthy. Now they are healthy. They are deep, and Dame Lillard is playing out of his mind right now. Which one if you had to pick, which one do you want your Lakers to go up against?
Oh man, I was rooting for the Mavs on, what was it, 2 days ago? I was rooting for the Mavs hard, man. There was 2 games that the Trailblazers. I'm glad. Things go the wrong way for them a lot of the times during the regular season, but man, some things were going right for them towards the end with their 2 important games against the Mavs, and I think Clippers maybe was another team that they were going up that they had a close win against. But no, I was totally rooting for the Suns because I don't think that there's anybody on Phoenix that could give as much trouble to Davis as much as Nurkic could on the Trailblazers. But you're right. This team, I've been watching them closely because it's probably who the Lakers are going to be going up against in their first round. There's some weak points on it in their starting lineup with Melo and CJ McCollum right now, but he still needs to break out. I feel like he needs to have his bubble breakout. So,
I wouldn't say break after he injured his back. I mean, maybe that's the wrong choice of words for CJ McCollum.
You're right there. You're not wrong about that, but yeah, he still has yet to be the CJ McCollum that we know him as on this Trailblazers team. But man, oh man, I'm watching this game right now. Memphis was the third team I had the most confidence in making it out. And now that they have, I feel like Portland can get by them pretty easily. But oh boy, the Lakers will have their work cut out for them if they face Portland in that first round.
Yeah, and I think definitely you mentioned it, Nurkic being able to try to match up a little bit with Anthony Davis. When you have Hassan Whiteside coming off the bench, this is a team that, when healthy, actually has the bigs to try to match up with the Lakers, who that's one of their biggest advantages is they have so much depth in their front court. And then where they've been struggling, you lose Rajon Rondo, you don't have Avery Bradley all of a sudden. You're trying to keep up with Dame Lillard and C.J. McCollum, and even with C.J. McCollum hurt, that's going to be the hardest thing for the Lakers to do. Obviously, they're top heavy with Davis and LeBron James, and it'll be fun to see Carmelo Anthony and LeBron James face off for a second, and then you'll have to remember that LeBron James is just going to murder him because as much as Carmelo Anthony's had a little resurgence here, it's not real. It's a resurgence as he's now a role player. And as long as he can do that, he can be beneficial to the Trailblazers. It will just be sad to think that we never really got too many matchups with LeBron and Carmelo. And the one we got to remember is LeBron's still killing it. And Carmelo is like, I made one game winner. I'm back, right?
He's here.
I shot 5 of 14.
You all thought I was back. You all thought it was a funny contract signing. Now here he is starting in the playoffs.
Man, and it's just great that there's that little bit of resurgence is enough for everybody to come out, Dame Lillard, to remind people that they were wrong about it. Like, we still weren't wrong. Like, he got himself kicked off the Rockets team in like 10 games. Like, right. We didn't make that up. We didn't decide that. The Rockets players decided he was washed. It was funny to watch that sort of social media thing happen with a lot of the players trying to take down anybody who believes in analytics or knows how to look at a scoreboard. And this is not even advanced analytics. He shot 5 of 14 in the game they said as a resurgence. Like, the only good shot he made was the game winner. I'm glad for him. That's good. It was fun to watch, but it's just funny to think that the defensive Carmelo Anthony came out so strong after that. In terms of the Trailblazers, I'm trying to think of a short list. Like, I know you don't want that to be true for this matchup. If the Trailblazers go in and they get to compete, in terms of teams that we didn't think would be in that kind of, chance to run to the finals. I don't know which team kind of improved their stock more than the Trailblazers, but it all still comes down to you're the 8 seed facing off with the 1 seed. You're facing off with the top dog. It's a big moment. I think if you want to beat the Lakers, I would say it's probably better to face them now before, Rajon Rondo might come back. If you have a shot, it's this round, and the Trailblazers are good enough to face them. I'm not ready to put them in that group yet, and I don't know which team it would be. Is there a team that stands out to you that would be earn their way into, I wouldn't say front runner status, but maybe is that like bet where you're like, I don't like to pick the clear-cut favorites. That's not a good enough betting line for me. I'll take this team. Who is fourth right now in the chance of winning the NBA championship?
See, that's such a hard question because I don't think really any team stood out to me better than the 3 that we've named so far. I like the Celtics in one of the earlier podcasts that we did together. I like the Celtics and the youth of the team. But, man, Denver showed us that they have, when it comes to youth and age, that they have that they probably have the best, youngest bench in the NBA for the players that are coming off for them. I just don't think that those guys are yet ready to beat the teams like the LeBrons and ADs and the Giannis's or the Kawhis up there with the Clippers, the Kawhis and Paul George. I just don't think that I don't think they're there yet mature-wise. I don't think they're there with experience yet. There may be a conference finals at best kind of team right now. I had a very high hope for the Mavericks. I was really hoping they could sneak away from that 7 seed and hopefully play someone like the Nuggets, where I think they match up better in a series. But it's mostly Denver. It is the 4th best team that they could probably win the championship right now. Indiana with Warren and Oladipo, they were another exciting team that came out hot in the bubble. and found some spark. But for me, yeah, it's I think the Nuggets show the most. And now with the Westbrook out for the Rockets, it's I don't even know if they'll make it past the first round.
Yeah, and I think with the Nuggets, you look at how many people they have there, how much they had to kind of play without some of their key players, and all that did was give us a chance to see Michael Porter Jr. is ready to step up and play like the high draft pick that he
Mm-hmm.
was originally going to be before he had the injury that just kind of moved him down and then hasn't allowed him to kind of showcase his talents to this point in the NBA. That's a steal for a team that was already loaded. That's a team that is fighting for the third spot without a guy like Michael Porter Jr., who might become that superstar player that you definitely need to win. Like, it's one thing to be a very balanced team that has depth, but you need a couple legit top 10 talents. And Michael Porter Jr. might end up becoming that guy for them. Might not work this year. You're right. They're still young, but definitely stands out as a team that has so many pieces and will be scary over the next few years. They were already doing some really good stuff over the last couple of years. And then you mentioned for the Mavericks, for me, that was one that I thought going in, I had a similar idea. Maybe they could make that push. When you look at what Luka's been doing, when he's paired up with Kristaps Porzingis, this team is capable of doing a lot of things. But they're probably the ones who took the biggest loss in their stock in terms of how good is this team and what they're capable of. I think we all knew going in that they had some not a great record in terms of holding on to games in the last couple minutes. And sometimes you look at that as sample size. Is that going to bear out, particularly when you get into the playoffs? And in this case, they go in these seeding games and they found themselves in the close games down the stretch, and it didn't work out well for them. They had room to move up, and those troubles weren't just random games during the regular season. They really do have trouble finishing games, being the closer, and that'll be interesting to see kind of how they adapt that in this playoff series. And I am assuming the one and done going up against the Clippers, but I think after that, next year we're going to see what these players are doing, whatever form of offseason they have and whatever form of the season will be for the NBA next year. They will definitely have to work on that and figure out how do we stop that, because that's not just like a random stat that somebody pulls out that accumulated over season. They came into this do or die, needing to win, needing to get themselves into a higher seed, and they weren't able to do it when the game was on the line. That's not a good sign for a team that when you wonder, can they knock off a team in the playoffs? No, you can't. If you can't win those type of games, that's how you win a series. That's how you steal one and maybe get yourself out of the first round into, we've seen some teams make it to the conference finals. Maybe not win an NBA championship that way, but you can make a deep run and get a lot of experience. I don't see that happening for the Mavericks. I thought they could, and now I don't expect them to do much as the playoffs go along. And that's another one in terms of the breakdown. We found out even before we got those last couple games to figure out the final teams getting into the playoffs. Everything was pretty set pretty quickly, which is amazing that this format kept it so exciting down the stretch, despite the fact that most of this was kind of written in very quickly. We knew here are the matchups, and there's only a couple that could change down the stretch. But what series in this first round of the NBA playoffs is most exciting for you? Is it one we already talked about with Portland trying to beat the Grizzlies to make it in and face the Lakers? Or what is the series that really stands out as this is much watched television as the NBA playoffs get underway?
I see everybody mostly, at least on the in the sports world, they're saying that Rockets and Thunder are their must watch, and that's a good series to watch. There's a lot of storylines that can be made from that series. But for me, it's the one I've always been talking about since the season started, and it's the Pacers and Heat. I think that these are two teams that are equally matched. Both can give the Bucks maybe not a run for their money, but definitely a 7-game series in that semifinals. Make the road a bit tougher for the Bucks. But just think of all the playoff series history the playoff series that these two teams have together in our lifetime. I remember watching Eastern Conference Finals bouts against these two franchises, and I think that heat is still there between I believe it's Warren and Butler. That same competitive drive, fire. I think that this can be a seven-game series. Second favorite, though, I'm very curious to see how it turns out, and it's all going to be depending on the play of one player, and that's the Boston and Philadelphia series. How will Joel Embiid do in a 7-game series against the Celtics without his teammate Simmons, without that other co-guy there? Will he stand out the way? Will he go back and listen to Shaq and Charles when they called him out? And he went out and had his career high, I think 38 points the next day or a couple days later. How are the Celtics going to do physically against this team? Because it's not going to be an easy series up next. Because the 76ers, they're a bad boys team. They play a little tough, dirty, and that's what they're gonna seek for an advantage in this series, is by pushing around the guards. Because that's what you're gonna do. You're okay inside as long as Embiid plays how he's supposed to be playing. You're better if he plays great, obviously, but that's where this team is gonna. Where's this perimeter defense gonna be? How are they gonna be able to handle the three guard set that the Celtics like to run so much?
Yeah, and I would say for your first pick, Pacers Heat, I mean, I'm talking like must-watch television. That's must-watch basketball. That's hoop heads understand how much this Heat team is so good. They don't quite have the pieces they need to really make a legitimate run at trying to go to the finals, but they are the type of team that could give somebody a run for their money and maybe knock off a competitor, and you just kind of ruin a team, whether it's going up against the Bucks in the second round. And then on the Pacers side, another team that you think when Oladipo wasn't going to be in the bubble, you're like, well, this Pacers team isn't going to have much. TJ Warren came out, lit the bubble on fire, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, this is a team that has a lot there. They have a lot to build on. Another team that I don't really know how far they go, but I know that a Pacers Heat matchup is going to be gritty, hard-nosed basketball that for a lot of basketball fans will be fun to watch. But in terms of great television, in terms of the casual fan tuning in, it's got to be there are a few options. If you got Rockets with Westbrook on there going up against the Thunder that they traded away Westbrook, thinking it was a rebuild with Chris Paul, and Chris Paul's like, ain't happening. And they're already, in position to, better than they were with Westbrook. And that's Chris Paul saying, hey, I know you don't think I'm on that level, but I am. I'm that guy. I know you think I'm too old. I'm not. I can still do this. I have Allstate commercials. Buy it. Or State Farm, I guess.
State Farm.
You know that would be a really great matchup. And I just, in terms of watching the Rockets, they're must see because of the way they play. When they're playing this small ball, it's been fun. And I don't know how much they were a team that kind of slumped towards the end because they already kind of knew where they were going to be, and there's no real point in pushing it. But to start the bubble, that was another team that couldn't believe how good they were offensively, despite the fact that we thought that might be the thing hurt the most in this format to kick it off. They came out looking amazing, and if they can do that for a 7-game series, I think they can beat anyone. I don't think they will, and I don't think they'll do it 4 times to win an NBA championship, but exciting. And on the Celtics 76ers side, I don't even know if that's the most watched series, but you're right that Joel Embiid is the person to watch in that series, because everything about the 76ers and what is kind of been their shortcomings has been the chemistry between Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. What they can do where you have a guy who down on the block, Joel Embiid, has been crushing people inside this year. And while it's important that he can shoot on the outside, he's still just a 30% three-point shooter. He has a guy like Ben Simmons who also seems like a transcendental talent, but the two of them together, where neither one is good at outside shooting, Ben Simmons is allergic to shooting three-pointers. It's hard to imagine those two working together in the modern NBA where threes are king. And now it's like, I don't know if they're to the point where they know they can't win and their best shot was, maybe if they had a guy like Jimmy Butler on their team, that would be great, but I don't know how they would ever have that. they just don't have whatever that third piece would be to make this work. And so they might have to look at shopping one of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. And if you look at the modern NBA, I mean, you look at how well Giannis is doing with the Bucks, I'd have to imagine you'd look at Ben Simmons and think, that's the guy. Get 4 shooters around him, and he plays in a way that is so unstoppable, you just limit the negative that is his lack of outside shooting. But then you also have Joel Embiid. There are very few guys who can play center the way he does and still have a certain level of outside shot. Very few guys who can, guard the rim the way that Joel Embiid does. You can also put 4 shooters around him and see what happens. But now you have to see if they're capable of doing that. They have a lot of guys that they could build an offense around. And this is almost Joel Embiid's audition to say, I'm the guy. If you have to pick one, you have to pick me. And I know that's probably not what Joel Embiid is thinking, but that happens to be the case. Like, this could be the moment that tells the front office, if we're in a position where one of these guys got to go, we had that audition for Joel Embiid. We know how well it went, and we'll see how he does, because I don't think it's this year, but I think it's coming up. I think if you go one more year and you can't put the pieces to get them in the right spot, and I know last year they were a game away. If that ball doesn't bounce the right way for Kawhi Leonard, maybe it's the 76ers that win that and go on, and they could have gone on and got a championship. Who knows? But now they're going backwards. They don't have Jimmy Butler. They don't have the pieces that make sense for this team. And Shake Milton, it was interesting to watch, but it didn't work. Like, it didn't solve the issues that they had. Now it's, okay, if Joel Embiid's the focus and we don't have this cluster of players who do their best around the rim, now it's Joel Embiid's going to kill you around the rim, and we're making the rest of the offense work off of that. We'll see how well they do, because that'll be very important for what the 76ers decide to do going forward. I'm trying to think of other compelling matchups in the first round. For me, I love all of them. I'd watch NBA. I've just had it on for 8 hours. No matter what I've been doing, it's been on the background. I've made sure that it's there to tune in. Every time I see a 5-point game in the last 3 to 5 minutes, I tune in. I look up and I make sure what's going on. But all of this should be fun. I'm excited for the playoffs. I'm excited for the bubble. And right now, before we move on, we can't just ignore some of the teams that are already going to have to go home. But there were some great performances, and now we're going to have our NBA Bubble Awards. We're going to have MVP. We're going to have the best coach. We're going to have a breakout player. We're going to have Rookie of the Bubble, and then we'll give you our all-bubble team. But starting out with MVP, this might be the shortest we have to talk, unless we just get into fanboy status. But I think the winner is Dame Lillard. I think there's not really much argument there, and I believe they already did the voting, so the actual official Bubble Awards, he got the unanimous MVP vote. So he got all of it.
Yeah, he's all right.
It's more important than when Steph Curry got the unanimous actual MVP for a full season. Dame Lillard just came in, and he was shooting so well, and he already had great games. But then when you get to do or die in this last game against the Nets, and God, they were playing box and one with him, and he's still just taking the shot from the half-court line. At one point, they moved off of him, so he took a guarded three from probably like 4 feet behind the three-point line and got the three. This isn't just like a random shot like Steph Curry does in the middle of the regular season. We're like, hey, why not? This is do or die time, and Dame Lillard's like, I'm still taking YOLO shots. And he's making them. Like, you look at – I couldn't believe he was taking that many of the shots like that. He was being guarded, double-teamed the whole game, and he was still shooting lights out. Like, the numbers were good. It wasn't an inefficient game. And he did that all the way to – I mean, how many times did he score 50-plus points? Was it with 3 or 4 times just during the bubble? Like, that was crazy to watch Dame Lillard just put the team on his back, know C.J. McCollum is injured, and say, hey, I'm willing my team into a play-in game to make it into the playoffs.
I'm telling you, man, it was so frustrating watching that Nets game because I think that the Nets were playing some of the best defense that we've seen a team put on Lillard in the bubble, and he was still just picking them apart and still just making every shot that he took. Like I said, as someone who was watching that game very closely, hoping that the Trailblazers were going to lose, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I really don't want to see that, like I said, because they're listed as an 8 seed, but I wouldn't be, like you said, with everyone back, that is a 4 seed team right there.
Yeah. Final numbers there for Dame Lillard: 37.6 points a game on 50, 44, 89 shooting splits, 9.6 assists, 4.3 rebounds. He just played so phenomenally. It's hard to imagine that Devin Booker led the Suns to an undefeated bubble run, and it's like not even a question. No offense, Booker, but Damian Lillard took that MVP. Best coach for the bubble.
All right, so the popular opinion is Monty Williams of the Suns, but mine, personal one, I would have to go with Jack Vaughn, the Brooklyn Nets, because not only did he have to go, that franchise had to go out and just sign players and bring back Michael Beasley from the free agency grave, but he also kept his team with not as the 8th seed. He kept them in as a 7th seed, and they were able to sneak their way into the playoffs and played pretty competitively against Trailblazers team that actually was playing for something in that final bubble game. Toronto will probably be too much for them, but congrats to Jack Vaughn, and especially with this team's going for next year also when they bring in Kevin Durant. Who knows what this Brooklyn team will look like, but props to him for keeping them in playoff range, and just a team that I thought was going to utterly collapse and lose every single game because of the roster arrangements they had to make. But props to him for keeping them on their feet and keeping them above water. And now they get shot at 7 games with Toronto.
Yeah, the other team that if you had to look at it as, okay, we're not just giving this to the team that kind of stood out that shouldn't have had a chance and fought for it. Nick Nurse is what he's been able to do with the Raptors and get them to be the number 2 team in the East to, be in a position where, better record than they had with Kawhi Leonard. Now, I feel like that's a false stat because we all know that the load management Kawhi Leonard had was perfectly built to have him be ready for the playoffs. It wasn't about regular season record, but nobody imagined they would be just as good in the regular season and that they would be playing this well going in to the playoffs. So it should be interesting. I'm still not a believer. I'm still, we had the conversation earlier about teams that kind of move themselves into that contender space. I think a lot of NBA heads were putting the Raptors there, and I need to see it to believe it. I need to see a Raptors team that doesn't have a superstar like Kawhi Leonard do more than just win 60 games. And then maybe Nick Nurse is the difference. Maybe what they had with Dwayne Casey, they played really well getting that team to the postseason. Maybe it's just not having a guy like DeMar DeRozan who can put up numbers, but in terms of winning playoff basketball, he's just not quite there with his lack of three-point shooting. Maybe that's it, but I need to see it. I need to see them actually win big games, important games, and even just the second round of the playoffs or Eastern Conference with the Bucks. I just can't imagine it being any different than it's been in the past. I think it's a team that eats on lesser teams, eats on undisciplined teams, but when they face the cream of the crop, they go down. I think that's
Brooklyn's got a good shot then.
Yeah. Well, Brooklyn is that's the work hard, but they just don't quite have the pieces. I think the Raptors beat them, but
right.
I think you convinced me. I was 50-50 on Nick Nurse and Monty Williams. I wanted to give it to Monty just because you look at what he did with the Suns versus what his team that got rid of him, the New Orleans Pelicans, did when they have Zion, and that team just melted down in the bubble. I kind of wanted to give it to him just as it seemed poetic to me. But no, you convinced me. KU has to get the love right now. Jacques Vaughn is to get the Nets to where they needed to be. Mm-hmm. Is nuts. That's a team that
as an interim head coach too, right?
Yeah, like to be able to do that with you're talking Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, like your team is built to have them, and we knew that the Nets were obviously good enough to be a playoff team before they went out and picked up those 2 guys. But once you bring them in and you have to make the moves, it's like, okay, we should have the pieces to build around those two to be a true competitor. When you lose them and you don't have them out there playing, I just don't even know how you begin to plan to win and get yourselves into the playoffs. And they kept fighting. They were beating teams that it's not even just bad teams. There weren't really that many bad teams in the bubble. That's kind of the beauty of the bubble, is the only people in are playoff teams. And for them to win as many games as they did, look the way they did against a Trailblazers team that was playing so well. We talked about what that meant for Dame Lillard and how good they looked. Think about what that meant for the Nets. And the Nets looked amazing. You convinced me. Jacques Vaughn gets the best coach, and I don't want to hear anything different. Breakout player of the bubble. This is a tough one because I think there's a handful that could really grab this award. But who do you got as somebody who just really took the bubble and they elevated their stock? They showed that, hey, I'm here. I'm going to be a force in the NBA.
Dan, yeah, you nailed it. There's a lot of players, and that was so cool about it too, because like a chance like this where teams could rest their superstars if they already know where they're at. Bol started off so hot in that first game, and he's been so fun to watch. But I think it has to be Michael Porter for me. Being a Missouri fan, also not really getting to see who he was as a college basketball player, but now we're actually starting to get to see the Michael Porter we've all been waiting for what it seems like, 3 years, 4 years, probably not even 4 years, 3 years, 2 years. It was a lot of fun getting to watch him finally show off and show out what he can do, and showing a reason why the Nuggets took him and said that it was a steal of the draft when they drafted him in the mid first round. He is going to be very dangerous because he is a forward like built, but plays like a guard and has the skill sets of a guard. Especially, he's the perfect mold of what you would want. I wouldn't say near perfect mold of what you want from a forward in today's game. A lot of fun to watch. So smooth with the ball, getting to the basket. His shot from the wrist to the hoop is just poetic, like a word that you said earlier. But he was a lot of fun to watch.
So I assume you're also going to have him for rookie of the bubble, because I mean technically this is his first year, right? This is
you got me. I double named him there because I feel like he deserves something from what he's come back also injury wise and what he's accomplished so far. And like I said, that the Nuggets are there. They had the pieces. They got the best youth bench in the NBA. But once they run into a team like Clippers in that second round, it's going to be a good series, really good series. But the Clippers again have the edge over.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with Michael Porter Jr. on the rookie of the bubble. But for breakout player, I got to go T.J. Warren. I think when it just got us fired up for the bubble. Like that was the first big just moment is T.J. Warren saying, yeah, I got traded for cash considerations and a second round pick. And also I'm going to drop 43 points on the Philadelphia 76ers. So when he did that and to have the Pacers in the position, we talked about it earlier with the matchup with the Heat. This is a team that easily, if they started falling down the Eastern Conference standing, we couldn't have been mad at them, because when you're going in and you don't have Domantas Sabonis, when Oladipo is restricted, not getting in there, you don't imagine this team can do much. And they were able to make the most of it just because T.J. Warren came out and played amazing throughout the bubble. 31 points a game on 58, 52, 89 shooting splits, and then 6.3 rebounds, couple of assists a game. He played amazing. He's my pick for breakout player in the bubble. And then now we'll get to a fun one, the all-seeding first team. I think very clear we can just write these ones in. Dame Lillard, obviously, since we gave him MVP.
Yeah.
Devin Booker, I think, was a pretty easy pick right there. That is right there. He is clearly a step down from Dame Lillard in the bubble MVP. But I feel like, and you can tell me if you're wrong, you'd have somebody else put in there. second best player in the bubble. If Dame Lillard wasn't there doing what he was doing, Devin Booker would have gotten the bubble MVP.
Of course, yeah. It was really just one of those things again where Booker and Suns could have been a really good story, especially if they made the playoffs. But there's just for some reason with those things, there's always just something that just stops them. That's a little bit better. And you're right, that was Lillard and the Trailblazers.
Yeah, and Devin Booker with 30.5 points a game, had 6 assists and just a notch under 5 rebounds. Doing amazing, and it's playing that well on top of being able to lead the Suns to 8-0, which I don't think anybody saw coming. Next on the list for me, I'm going to go Luka Doncic, just because Luka was another one that, man, I'm still amazed when he does his YOLO shots, because he did a few that look like Damian Lillard's half-court ones. But, like, Luka shoots like 30% from 3, and he's still not scared to pull up from 40 feet for no reason at all. And you know what's weird? He seems to make those. Like, if he just took those shots, he might shoot better than 30% from 3. But when you have near triple-double in the bubble, he's 30 points a game, and then I think 9.7 assists. So he's right there just killing it. He had so many games. I know the Mavs kept losing those close games down the stretch, but without a doubt, his play was one of the biggest highlights of the bubble. Fun to watch night in and night out. Do you got Luka on your top 5 for the bubble?
Yeah, and I think it had to be because also he almost put up 20 assists in one game while in the bubble. It's dangerous that for the rest of the league that there's someone like him at the age that he's at to make the sport look so easy.
He's 21.
Yeah,
crazy.
Me and my roommates are all talking about a lot. We are witnessing someone really great, potentially. I don't want to say it, but he could be like a top 10 once his career is done. A top 10 player, scorer also. Oh my God! Especially if he's putting up the same kind of score, especially in today's NBA and where it's going to be once he hits his ceiling, whatever that looks like, which is kind of crazy to think about. He's doing it against grown men, people that are 5 years older than him, superstars. And the fact that he's being amongst the conversations at 21 years old, that is some serious talent right there.
Yeah, and I think with what he's able to accomplish, and I think back to like the conversation around like Kevin Durant when he came in the league and he was a little bit smaller. Like Luka is not big right now. He's not excessively athletic. When we see a lot of the stuff he does, he crosses people over, breaks their ankles, and then hits them with the layup instead of like a monster jam. At 21 years old, he still has time to figure out, is he just going to get stronger? Kind of like Kevin Durant did, where he stayed similar size, but as long as you work out and get to that point, he's a lot stronger than he was when he got in the league. Is he going to put on a little bit more weight to body people up? Because, he's already somebody who, if you put a big on him, they can't stay in front of him. If you put a guard on him, he's too tall for them. The skill set just means that he's able to put people, on the dry cycle, and he just murders them. Like, that skill at 21 is going to get better. Physically, he could be a different player in a couple of years, because at that age, you don't know. I mean, you look at even a LeBron when he came in the league. Like, he had muscles, but then 5 years later, LeBron is just massive. Like, he's just pushing people around. I don't expect Luka to do that, but he could change his body over the next couple of years, grow into it, and be an even more dominant player than somebody who can put up triple doubles easily, can see the court as well as he can see it. And right now, they're kind of just at the beginning of growing into this team and figuring out what he can do. Seeing how he matches with Kristaps Porzingis, seeing what other players you can put around Luka, and then how good he will get. The sky is the limit, and there's no reason to jump into like top 10 all-time talk or anything. But there is conversation. It's like, could he possibly be the best player in the league in a few years? It's always tough because you just look at how well Giannis is playing. That's a high bar to clear, but Luka's playing at the level right now where it doesn't seem that big of a stretch to imagine him doing that. I threw out the first 3 names and had you, just sign off on them. let me get your last two for all bubble team. Who do you got?
Well, and I feel like we just talked about Luka, and now I feel like we have to talk about his teammate also because he's well deserved also to be in this bubble, and that's Kristaps Porzingis. That tells you right there, that shows you right now that they have the two guys that we see that we're seeing throughout the league with other teams, where you have your two superstars. They're maybe not superstar level yet, but but the Mavericks are a franchise that have their two guys, and that they're going to build around. But man, they do not have that bench around them right now, and I feel like that's why they're still in that lower part of the seeding. But Porzingis, watching him against the Trailblazers also, or maybe it was the Clippers, everything was just going in for him. You know, maybe not as much as it was going in for Lillard throughout the bubble, but for Porzingis, this was a guy that once again can play inside out, is what the NBA forward is supposed to be right now in today's game. But someone like him, especially, he just so nice to watch him play. He works well with Luka. They're both two guys that are kind of natural scorers, and they both get after the rebounds a lot. I think there was one offensive possession where the Mavs had like 5 offensive rebounds on the same side of the court. And that's just who those two players are. They play really well together. But Porzingis, he stood out and averaged 30 points in the bubble, and that right there says something to me as a forward. And at this Mavs team, we saw it when they play the Rockets, and that no defensive game pretty much. I think that went into like 170 points each for both teams. This team's gonna be very dangerous in the future, and it's gonna be because of the work of these two guys. And then my last one would be James Harden, because he just showed out, and that's what you do on these first teams is you pick players that were just scoring and scoring and scoring, and that's who Harden was. He played he played the basketball that Houston puts around him, and it showed. Now will it work against the Thunder in the playoffs? We'll see, because I'm really curious what this because the Rockets team is basically back to where they were now, because Chris Paul missed the playoffs a couple of years ago, I feel like. I can't remember if it was 2 years ago. But, yeah, they're kind of back to where they were.
Yeah, and I would say that they might have a little bit better of a shot because, I mean, I brought this up when we were heading into the bubble. I think the Rockets, generally speaking, we know James Harden just puts up ridiculous offensive numbers throughout the regular season. And then when we get into the playoffs, the numbers drop off. And the question is how much of it is because when you're facing a team in a 7-game series, they're able to scout you better, to have defensive game plans to limit what James Harden can do. And so his numbers are going to come back down to earth a little bit. And then how much is because where other top teams are doing load management, James Harden is 100 miles an hour for 82 games a year. And by the time they get to the playoffs, there's no way to put up those same stats. Now, they've had 4 months off. They're coming back into this bubble action. And sure enough, he did not miss a beat, even though he showed up right at the tail end of the bubble starting. And he just walks in and he's like, I'm money. Don't worry about it. If he's fresh for these playoffs, I think that's different than what we've seen each of the last few years is James Harden coming in, playing elite where he's not gassed. I think could be a different outcome than what we've seen. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to make a run to the finals or anything, but it should be interesting to see where they're at. And I think he's on my team too with he shot 54, 37, and 90 in a 4-month layoff, coming back and just shooting so many shots. You'd have to imagine, okay, he's making a lot of points. There's no defense, but then his numbers should drop. No, he is shooting lights out. And then another one of nearly a triple-double, over 9 rebounds, just under 9 assists. James Harden's on the list. And the last one is kind of a 50-50. We talked about TJ Warren. He did so well. I want to put him on there, but I also feel like there's somebody that the stats have always been a little bit underwhelming, but we know that what they do for a basketball team puts them in position, and that has not been any more apparent than watching what this team has done this year. And that's watching the Oklahoma City Thunder, and that's watching Chris Paul just be a maestro at the game of basketball. He's had 17 points, 6.5 assists, 5.5 rebounds, but he also shot 49, 40, 97. Like the 97 free throws is just ridiculous. Chris Paul has been so efficient. He's done everything he could possibly do to get this team to be top 5 in the West, despite the fact that nobody thought that was possible when you saw what this team was when they were built around Russell Westbrook. They make those trades. They have all those picks. And sure enough, just Chris Paul and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander playing so well has got them in that position. I'm going to give it to Chris Paul. I think too often he kind of gets that edge where it's like, yeah, somebody else looked a little bit more flashy. It's all bubble awards. I think that's definitely the moment Chris Paul needs to be rewarded for how well he looks so often. I think that's all we have for the NBA returning. Is there anything else about the bubble, about the playoffs coming up that stands out to you that you feel like you want to talk about right now, Marco?
Anything that stands out? No, I feel like we got to mostly everything playoff-wise and then bubble-wise, talking about what we liked and didn't like from it. Like I said, I would not be upset if they did something each year where they had a playing game for 8-9 to make it a little bit more competitive down there, because sometimes it's not always right. And I think we're seeing it right now, that it's working its way to where it could get right.
Yeah, without a doubt, I think of all the things, there was a lot of stuff that looked cool, but a lot of it was bandages to a bubble season. The one thing that without a doubt worked and could easily be added into a normal NBA season would be having the play-in for the 8th seed. And without a doubt, if you have those 9, 10, and 11s in each conference fighting to get within 4 games to have that, one, we get more basketball. We get competitive basketball down the stretch. And if we get anything that resembles what we saw between the Trailblazers and the Nets, then it's worth it. Like that being the final night of basketball each season is good. So NBA, put that in there. Get it fixed. Make sure it's there for every season going forward. And that's it. That's all we have for this episode of Too Many Points on the Tell Me More podcast. Later, folks.